Let me say this straight out. This is why people hate you. And I don't say that to offend you. I say that to wake you up. See, we live in a world where people are more afraid of offending than they are of underachieving. But I've got news for you. You can't transform your life if you're allergic to truth. So today, I'm going to give you 4 reasons why people hate you. Not so you can go cry in a corner, but so you can correct the course, elevate your mindset, and walk in the purpose God gave you. You expect respect you haven't earned. That's one of the biggest reasons you're stuck financially, relationally, spiritually. You walk into rooms with your chest puffed up thinking people should bow down because you showed up. But let's be clear, showing up isn't the same as stepping up. Nobody owes you respect because of your presence. Respect is earned through performance, through production, through consistent, measurable, valuable impact. Period. The reason you're frustrated isn't because you're disrespected. It's because you're not respected enough for how highly you think of yourself. And that gap between your self-perception and your results is where the resentment creeps in. But here's what you need to understand. You're not being disrespected. You're being accurately measured. And that hurts, doesn't it? It hurts when you realize that your name doesn't carry weight because you haven't done anything heavy. You want to be seen as a leader, but you haven't led anything. You want to be called a visionary, but you haven't produced a clear vision that transforms lives. You want to be honored for your ideas, but you haven't executed them at scale. That's the problem right there. You confuse desire with deserving. You think wanting success entitles you to admiration. It doesn't. Success doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. God doesn't bless laziness masquerading as potential. Wanting to be respected is natural, but expecting it when you've contributed little or nothing is entitlement in disguise. The world does not reward effort, it rewards results. That doesn't mean effort isn't important. It means if your effort isn't producing something valuable, you need to stop demanding applause and start improving your output. You're not being overlooked. You're being accurately ranked. And instead of blaming other people, instead of accusing others of hating on you or being jealous, take an honest inventory of what you've built. What systems have you created? What problems have you solved? What kind of value are you delivering into the world, into your community, into your industry? Respect is the natural response to consistent value. People respect builders. People respect those who deliver excellence. People respect clarity, consistency, commitment. So if you're being ignored, it's not always because people are hating. It might just be that you haven't made yourself impossible to ignore yet. And let me put it like this. If you were removed from your workplace, your industry, your community, would there be a noticeable void? Would people feel the weight of your absence? Would your absence create inconvenience, loss, or even chaos? If not, then your presence wasn't carrying much value to begin with. And again, this isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to expose the gap between your perception and your production. We live in a culture where people think that just having a brand on Instagram means you should be respected as an entrepreneur. You throw CEO in your bio and suddenly you expect people to take you seriously. But let me tell you something. Titles without traction are just decoration. You can call yourself whatever you want, but until your results start talking for you, people aren't going to clap just because you showed up. You want to know how to get real respect? Serve, deliver, solve, build, teach, love, empower, uplift, lead, help people win. Do that consistently, and I promise you, people will respect you. Even your enemies will acknowledge your impact. They may not like you, but they won't be able to deny you. But right now, you're frustrated because you've built an image without building a reputation. You've got a persona, but no proof. You've learned the language of success, but haven't done the labor of success. You've studied branding and skipped mastery. And that's why people are nice to your face and indifferent to your work. Let me be brutally honest. Respect is expensive. It costs time, discipline, humility, perseverance. You earn it one decision at a time, one sacrifice at a time, one solved problem at a time. And the moment you think you deserve it without that payment is the moment you become delusional. There is no shortcut to significance. So ask yourself, what am I actually building? Who am I actually helping? What am I doing consistently that creates outcomes for other people? That's your report card, not likes, not followers, not your job title, not your intentions. When you want to walk into a room and have people sit up, then you need to become the kind of person who changes atmospheres just by your presence. Not because of your clothes or your money or your resume, but because of your track record of impact. When you solve real problems, people talk differently when you walk in. They make space, they lean in, and they listen because they know you bring weight, not noise, weight, not height, not ego, evidence. So stop expecting respect you haven't earned. Start earning it. Let your actions speak. Let your results roar. Let your discipline compound. Then and only then will the world respond with the respect you once thought you deserved and now actually do. You criticize what you don't understand, and it's costing you more than you realize. You're quick to shoot your mouth off about what someone else is doing, how they're doing it, or why it doesn't make sense to you. But have you ever stopped to consider that maybe it doesn't make sense to you because you've never done it? You mock what you've never built. You tear down what you've never tried. And you wonder why you're stuck in the same place while others are elevating. The truth is, it's easy to be a critic when you're sitting on the sidelines. It takes zero courage to point fingers. It takes no discipline to form opinions. Anyone can sit in the cheap seats and talk about how the player missed the shot. But you're not the one under the lights, sweating, bleeding, working, adjusting, failing, trying again. You're not carrying the weight, yet you've got the most to say. And that's the problem. See, when you criticize what you don't understand, you expose your ignorance, not your intelligence. You think you're sounding smart, but people who actually know what they're doing can hear the hollowness in your words. They can tell you haven't been there. They can tell you haven't walked through the fire. They can tell your commentary is based on assumptions, not experience. And that's why doors close. That's why influence escapes you. That's why growth feels impossible, because you've made yourself more committed to being right than to learning truth. Let's be clear. Observation is not the same as understanding. You can watch someone for 10 years and still not understand what it takes to do what they do. You might see the fruit, but you don't understand the root. You don't see the sacrifice, the risk, the years of silent preparation. All you see is the surface, and you build your opinion off a snapshot of someone else's movie. That's not wisdom. That's arrogance. And arrogance is the enemy of elevation. You cannot grow in something you mock. You cannot learn from someone you envy. And you will never rise above the level of what you secretly resent. That's why you stay broke. That's why you stay bitter. Because you're too busy critiquing someone else's strategy instead of improving your own. You criticize rich people, but you've never built wealth. You criticize leaders, but you've never led anyone. You criticize churches, but you've never carried spiritual responsibility. You criticize entrepreneurs, but you've never put your own money on the line. You criticize parents, but you've never had to raise a child through trauma, sickness, or rebellion. You have opinions on everything, but experience in nothing. That's not insight. That's immaturity. There's a reason wise people are slow to speak. They've been in the trenches. They know how little they actually know. They don't rush to judge because they understand the complexity behind success, failure, leadership, growth. But the untested, the unproven, the people who've never risked or led or carried weight, they speak quickly and loudly because they're more committed to their ego than to the truth. When you criticize what you don't understand, you cut yourself off from the very thing that could change your life. Learning. You can't receive from what you resent. You can't grow through what you constantly reject. And the longer you do this, the more you condition your brain to see people ahead of you as the enemy, instead of as evidence that something greater is possible. Let me tell you something that will free you if you're willing to hear it. You don't need to understand everything to honor it. You don't need to agree with everything to learn from it. The people you're judging might be the very people you were supposed to be learning from, but because you're too arrogant to ask questions, too insecure to admit you don't know, and too stubborn to consider another perspective, you forfeit the blessing that was standing right in front of you. Humility will take you further than hustle. Curiosity will take you deeper than criticism. You don't have to abandon your discernment. Just stop letting your pride masquerade as it. Some of the loudest critics are just afraid. Afraid to try, afraid to fail, afraid to be seen starting small. So instead, they tear others down as a way to hide their own fear of being exposed. That might be you. And if it is, hear me. It's time to stop. It's time to lay the ego down and pick up a learner's mindset. Before you criticize, ask yourself, do I understand what this person has sacrificed? Have I done what they've done? Have I tried what they've tried? If the answer is no, be quiet, watch, learn, ask questions, seek wisdom. Don't be so fast to post your opinion. Don't be so eager to sound smart. Be more hungry to grow than to be seen. The most dangerous thing you can do is talk like a master in a field where you haven't even become a student. That's how you end up disrespected. That's how you end up alone. That's how you end up stuck. People who operate at a high level don't waste time explaining themselves to critics. They just keep building, and while you're talking, they're winning. You want to elevate your life? Start by elevating your mindset. Replace your criticism with curiosity. Instead of tearing down, start building up. Instead of mocking, start mastering. Instead of reacting, start researching. When you stop criticizing what you don't understand, you make room to grow into what you could become. If only you'd humble yourself enough to learn. You confuse confidence with arrogance, and that confusion is quietly sabotaging your progress. You think being loud, bold, and unfiltered makes you powerful, but in reality, it often just makes you look insecure. Real confidence doesn't need to announce itself. Real confidence walks in the room and doesn't have to dominate it. It simply is. But when you confuse that with arrogance, you start building your identity on a shaky foundation, a foundation that crumbles the moment you're challenged, ignored, or not praised like you expected. Arrogance is loud because it's scared. It's scared of being exposed, scared of being wrong, scared of being unseen. Confidence, on the other hand, is rooted, it's grounded. It doesn't panic when it's not the center of attention. It doesn't collapse when it's corrected. It doesn't shrink when it's not applauded. Arrogance is about performance. Confidence is about presence. One is about proving something to everyone else. The other is about knowing something within yourself. You might think you're showing up with power, but if people walk away from you feeling smaller, unheard, or dismissed, that's not power. That's insecurity in disguise. You might think you're just being real or saying it like it is, but often you're just masking unhealed wounds with attitude. And the crazy thing is, people can see it. They might not say anything to your face, but they feel it. They feel that your energy isn't safe. They sense that your strength isn't secure. You're not drawing people in. You're pushing them away. All while convincing yourself it's because they're intimidated by you. No, they're just tired of arrogance parading as self-assurance. True confidence doesn't need to step on others to feel tall. It doesn't need to silence others to feel smart. It doesn't need the spotlight to validate its voice. That's the difference. But when you don't understand that difference, you'll constantly operate from a place of overcompensation. You'll dominate conversations not to contribute, but to be noticed. You'll make bold statements not because they're true, but because you want to be right. You'll resist feedback not because it's wrong, but because you're too fragile to accept that you might not know everything. And here's where it gets real. When you're operating from arrogance, you don't grow. You can't grow. Because every correction feels like an attack. Every suggestion feels like an insult. Every mentor becomes a competitor in your mind. And as a result, you stay stuck. You stay loud and stagnant, flashy but fragile, visible but untrusted. See, confidence invites growth. It listens, it adapts, it's secure enough to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. Arrogance pretends to know everything and gets offended when it's questioned. Confidence can sit in a room full of people smarter than them and celebrate it. Arrogance gets jealous and starts posturing. Confidence says, teach me. Arrogance says, let me show you how I'm better. And here's what's tragic. People who might have helped you grow, who were ready to open doors for you, are quietly walking away. Not because you lack potential, but because your pride makes you hard to work with. You make everything about you. You act like you're the smartest person in every room, and eventually people stop inviting you into rooms that would stretch and challenge you. You're limiting your access, not because you lack skill, but because you lack humility. And that humility is what would allow your confidence to flourish in a healthy way. It's not confidence if your voice gets louder when you're wrong. It's not confidence if you interrupt people just to make sure your opinion gets heard. It's not confidence if you always need the last word. It's not confidence if you can't celebrate someone else's win without making it about you. Let me be even more clear. Confidence is built on truth. You know who you are, you know what you're capable of, and you don't need to exaggerate it. You don't need to manipulate people into noticing it. You simply operate from that truth day in and day out. You don't chase validation, you create value. You don't shout over people, you show up with substance. And when you walk in like that, quiet, consistent, powerful, people feel it. But arrogance tries to manufacture respect through force. It tries to bend every conversation toward itself. It tries to control outcomes instead of influencing them. And it always ends the same way. Burned bridges, missed opportunities, and a reputation that no amount of branding can fix. If you're really about growth, about impact, about legacy, then you need to stop pretending that arrogance is strength. It's not. It's a wall you put up to protect yourself from being seen as weak. But guess what? The real weakness is hiding behind ego. The real weakness is refusing to change. The real weakness is choosing applause over character. People aren't turned off by confidence. They're drawn to it, but they run from arrogance. You might be getting attention now, but ask yourself, is it admiration or avoidance? Do people listen because they respect you or because they're afraid to challenge you? Are they inspired by you or exhausted by you? Confidence creates momentum. Arrogance creates resistance. If you're tired of hitting walls, check your posture. If people keep pulling away, check your tone. If growth feels slow, check your humility. You don't need to be loud to be respected. You don't need to be intimidating to be impactful. You don't need to be always right to be a leader. You just need to be confident, real, rooted, refined confidence. The kind that makes room for others. The kind that listens more than it speaks. The kind that grows, serves, builds. So drop the arrogance, build the confidence, one truth at a time, one humble step at a time, and watch your influence go further than your ego ever could. You operate from scarcity, not service, and that's the root of why your results feel small, strained, and unsatisfying. You think you're hustling. You think you're grinding. You think you're outworking everybody. But the truth is, you're just surviving. You're moving from a place of fear, not freedom. Your decisions aren't fueled by vision. They're driven by lack. And when lack is your foundation, service can't be your mission. You're too focused on what you don't have to give anyone anything real. Scarcity shows up in subtle ways. You undercharge because you don't believe people will pay. You hoard your ideas because you think someone else will steal your shine. You compete with everyone because you believe there's only room for one. You copy instead of create because you're afraid you're not enough on your own. And here's the irony. In your attempt to protect your peace, you forfeit the abundance that only comes through giving. Operating from scarcity makes you tight-fisted. It makes you territorial. It convinces you that success is limited, like a chair at a crowded table, and if someone else sits down, you lose your spot. But service says something completely different. Service says there's enough for all of us. Service says I can give without losing. Service says my value increases when others win too. And when you truly operate from service, you become magnetic. You attract opportunities, people, favor, because your energy says, I'm not here to take, I'm here to give. Let's be real. When you operate from scarcity, everything feels like a transaction. You only give when there's a guaranteed return. You only support when it benefits your image. You only share when you're sure you look like the expert. That's not service. That's control. And it's killing your ability to build trust because people can feel when your generosity is fake. They know when you're posting for praise instead of purpose. They know when your collaboration is just a strategy for more clout. You might be fooling yourself, but you're not fooling people with discernment. Service is different. Service is quiet strength. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's the value you bring when no one is paying you yet. It's how you show up when you're tired, unseen, and unpaid, because you're not building for applause, you're building for impact. And here's what's wild. That's what creates overflow, not desperation, not scarcity, not clutching every dollar, every client, every click. True service leads to supernatural supply. If your business, your brand, or your life feels stuck, ask yourself, am I truly serving, or am I just scrambling? Am I focused on pouring into others, or am I obsessed with protecting myself? Because when your energy is me, even if it looks like hard work, people will pull back. You'll repel the very things you say you want: partnership, growth, support, connection. Why? Because scarcity energy is exhausting. It makes everything feel tense, competitive, anxious. Service, though, is expansive. It opens doors. It breathes life into rooms. It creates partnerships without paranoia. It builds legacy without fear. And that's what you really want, isn't it? You don't just want income, you want impact. You don't just want sales, you want to be seen as someone who made a difference. You want your name to mean something beyond the dollar sign. But here's the catch. You can't serve while clutching everything with clenched fists. You can't become generous while thinking like a beggar. You can't change lives when you're stuck in survival mode. You have to shift. You have to start asking a different question. Not what can I get, but what can I give? Not how can I win, but how can I help others win? That's the moment everything starts to shift. Scarcity will convince you that giving means losing. But service knows that giving is the path to multiplying. You don't lose when you pour out. You lose when you hold back so tightly that nothing new can get in. If you want bigger results, offer bigger value. If you want more trust, show more heart. If you want stronger community, be a better contributor. The principle is simple, but the mindset shift is massive. You are not designed to operate like you're running out. That's not how abundance works. That's not how purpose works. You weren't built to hoard, compete, and obsess over what might go wrong. You were built to overflow. But overflow doesn't come to the closed-hearted or the closed-fisted. It comes to those who serve, who show up, who give value without always needing instant returns. That doesn't mean you work for free forever. That doesn't mean you give without boundaries. It means you lead with service. You build from purpose. You understand that money is the result, not the source. That people are not just prospects. They're lives you've been called to impact. When you serve like that, fully, genuinely, consistently, you start to rise. Not by force, not by fear, but by favor. So take a hard look at yourself. Are you operating from fear or from purpose? Are your decisions based on lack or on love? Are you trying to protect something small or build something eternal? The shift from scarcity to service doesn't just change how others experience you. It changes how you experience your own life. It brings peace. It brings joy. It brings clarity. And yes, it brings overflow. You're not running out, you're not behind, you're not too late, but you do need to change your posture. Stop reaching for crumbs. Start becoming the one who feeds nations. That happens when you move from fear to service, from scarcity to impact, from self-protection to legacy building. That's when you truly start to live and lead. So yeah, this is why people hate you. But here's the good news. You can change all of it today. Don't let ego lock you in a life that God designed for growth. You are one decision away from becoming the person people respect, love, and follow. Step into service. Step into truth. Step into purpose. Because when you do, the hate fades and the impact begins.